Checkmate Chapter 1, Legal's Pseudo-Sacrifice. We have not called this chapter Legal's Mate, but Legal's Pseudo-Sacrifice, because it is rather more of an attacking maneuver than an actual mate. In certain cases, this maneuver leads to a mate, and in other cases, to a decisive gain of material. Game number 3, Philidor Defense, played in Paris about 1750. Chimère de Legal. Chimère de Legal, Serre de Legal, 1710 to 1790, was a strong French player, considered the champion of the Café de la Régence, till he was beaten by A.D. Philidor, who was his pupil. Pawn, king 4, pawn, king 4, knight, king, bishop 3, pawn, queen 3, bishop, bishop 4, bishop, knight 5. Although this move looks strong, it's not always wise to pin the opponent's king's knight at such an early stage of the game, for the following reasons. 1, because the bishop can be driven away with advantage by pawn, rook 3, bishop, rook 4, or else it can be compelled to take the knight by pawn, rook 3, and then bishop takes knight, thus speeding up white's development as the queen comes into play. 2, it is always preferable to develop the knights before the bishops, because the latter have a much larger scope and can choose at their own convenience a square, depending upon what line of play the opponent chooses. And 3, because a pin is only a relative pin when the queen is behind the knight. As will be seen later, the knight may move in spite of the pin, threatening bishop, check, and in certain cases mate. Knight, bishop 3. Pawn, king, knight 3. Knight takes pawn. This brilliant move was discovered by Legal. Bishop takes queen. A very bad blunder. Black instinctively grabs the queen without noticing the threat. He thinks that he is just taking advantage of an oversight. The lesser evil was, of course, pawn takes knight, and queen takes bishop, and white has won a pawn with a considerable superiority of development. After the next move, white mates in 2. Bishop takes pawn check, king to king 2, and knight to queen 5 mate. This is the pattern of the Legal mate. The typical Legal mate. What is the use of studying this mate at length? The reader will wonder. It is 200 years old and quoted in every chess book. All players know it by heart, and there is not the faintest ghost of a chance of ever using it in a game. This objection is hardly valid. We do not ask you to learn this mate by heart. It is far more important to learn how it is brought about, and to realize the fact that the queen's bishop on knight 5 is unsupported, and if the king's and a sitting duck, if the king's knight leaves his king's bishop 3 to threaten mate. This mating device occurs in many positions as a potential threat, and the opponent must take this into consideration if he intends to pin the king's knight in the early stages of the game. Even today, many people are taken in by this famous 200-year-old mate, and all strong players know they will have the opportunity to use it at some time in simultaneous displays. The victims themselves have heard of it and even know it by heart, but since the details of the position differ, and since they have never properly understood the mechanics of such a mate, they get trapped like beginners. We now give you a few examples of this